Okay folks, for this LEDGlow kit, the wiring is something that I want to be done very well, so what I'm doing is, pardon my messy work area here, but I'm creating my own harness. So what I did is I went to my local electronics supply shop and I picked up some 4-connection 22 gauge wire. That's basically the same as the wire that comes on these LED kits here. But it's the connectors that's a big issue for me, and as I said earlier, I want connectors up near the LEDs so I can disconnect them from areas of the fairing that I might need to remove. So what I'm doing is I've got a length of wire that's going to actually be like a second harness. So what it's going to do is I've got a female connector here. Again, I got a whole bunch of them off of eBay, and that's duplicating the ends of the LEDs that go into the original harness. So this end will go into the harness, and then at the other end of this wire I will split it into 4 separate male ends that will replicate the original harness, but just further along in the bike. So you'll get a better idea of what I'm doing, but I just wanted to show you how I'm doing it. So right now I'm using this oh, dogs. I'm using this to solder these together, and you might be able to see there I've got some shrink wrap, some heat shrink tubing to secure the connection as well, and I'll show you how it looks when it's done. I've got the first connection soldered, and I'll just slide back the heat shrink tubing so you can see that. It's very delicate work here with these small gauge wires. So that's pretty strong there that I've got it soldered. But what you want to do, if you don't have one, go and pick up a multimeter. I talked about this in a different video that does continuity testing, because as you're doing these connections you're going to want to test them the whole way through. And what that does is, if I have one probe and I touch the other probe to it, you'll hear a beep. Okay? So what that says is that there's a continuous current in the circuit that you're testing. So if I was to take this probe, and it's kind of hard to do this one-handed, if I was to take one probe and put it onto the wire, which I have stripped a piece of to be able to test it. As you can see, it's really hard to do this stuff one-handed. There we go. That should be touching. And now, if I take there we go. If I take this probe and I put it to where the black wire is, you can hear that it's there's continuity there. It's loose because I'm trying to hold it with one hand. But anyway, you want to test these circuits as you go. Also, for doing this fine work, if you don't have one of these magnifying glasses with the little, they're helping hands things for soldering, and get yourself some hemostats, little clamps to hold your wires for you. It'll make your life a lot easier. Okay, so here's how the tip of my new harness looks after it's been shrink tubed, and I I shrunk all the connections inside as well so that they were protected. And so now I'm just going to use the multimeter and check out all the connections that they're still going, and then I'll start working on the other end of the harness, which will split off into 4 pieces. So even though by doing what I'm doing I'm technically voiding the warranty on this LEDGlow kit, I have to say that I believe that with what I'm doing I'm actually making this kit better than how they send it. You'll see that their connectors here, they do have some shrink tubing on the very end, but the connectors right up into the the wires right up into the connector are bare. What I've done by using some extra shrink tubing is I've been able to create a sleeve that is shrunk. It's hard to see with the lighting here, but shrunk right around the connector, so there are no wire areas that are exposed. So what I've done is I've slid, before I start connecting these up, I slid another smaller shrink tubing over top, down, so that I can slide it up after I'm done making these connections. So all of these wires are going to be together in one connection to make a harness that will wire up to the other end of the first one that I did here. So they'll connect all these and make it a little easier to run the connections where I want them at the front of the bike. There's only two at the very back, which I didn't need any special connections for. One thing you really have to do when you're doing wiring like this is really plan ahead for your shrink tubing. My assistant is down here whining on the floor, so that's what you hear. Once you connect the wires, you can't slide shrink tube over, so you've got to really plan it out and get that on beforehand, which is why on the wire here I've got 3 extra pieces of shrink tube that I can slide up. Oh, it's terrible. Anyway, so just keep those things in mind, that you really can't go back and unless you want to splice again, but once you soldered, that's it. So keep that in mind, plan ahead. Okay, so here's all my harness wires harnessed up, I guess. So I've got 4 of each going into one of the singles, and because the wire that I picked up here doesn't have blue, I'm using white to blue, but everything else is color to color. I've got all my heat shrink tube ready to be shrunk in place. Just double checking here. Yeah, everything looks like it's in the right place, so I'm gonna take my heat gun here and start shrinking the tubes. You can see them shrinking down. So now it's time to adjust the rest of the tubes and shrink those, and everything will be done. So I've actually got 3 layers of outer shrink wrap that come up to the harness, and then I've got some extra shrink wrap that's underneath. So this is going to be well secured here, just like it's basically, I'm making an identical version of the harness that this thing came with, just a 4-piece, so that I can do this from the front of the bike rather than having to wire each individual one out. Okay, so I'm just testing my harness here. So I've got a connector plugged in, I've got the black wire hemostated onto the black probe here. So when I take the red probe and I touch the black wire on any of the connections at the end of my other connectors, I've plugged connectors into all the other harnesses here, I should hear a tone. That's the black wire. And then what's good to do is also, again, it's hard to do this one-handed, but you also want to touch each of the other wires just to find out if there's any cross connections or anything, and there is none here. So test the black wire on these other connections, each one. That's good. And that's good too. So I'll test all the different colors. I've been very careful doing this, so I know that everything will be good. And then next to bring out the harness to the bike and start wiring it up. Okay, so it's nighttime out, and I've been forced into the garage because of some rain. But I've figured out where on the fairings I'm going to put the large strips. And for the, let's see, for the right side fairing, there's some foam that I'm just going to cut a little strip out of the foam where I'm going to be mounting this other LED strip. And my wiring harness, which is probably difficult to see, this is it here. I've got it wired up through and zip tied there. Probably can't see that very well, but I've got it wired up through so it'll be up underneath where all the other wiring is for the turn signals and whatnot, headlights, and easy access to unplug everything to take the fairings off. So then I'm going to put the ground effect lights on the underside of the fairing here, and then I'm going to drill holes to just some small holes to zip tie them in place as well, because they're right near the ground, and the small LEDs fit well there. So once I get it all in place, I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so for the ground effect lights, I use these small LEDs. They fit perfectly in the area that's at the bottom. So I've already adhered them on, and what I've done, as you can see, is just drilled some small holes on each side. Since it's at the bottom of the fairing, I'm not worried about the looks, so this way I can zip tie these in position, and I don't need to worry about them moving around, or if the heat from the exhaust has any effect on the adhesive or anything. I'm not going to have to worry about them falling off or dragging on the ground or anything like that. So just a good tip, but nowhere else on the bike obviously am I going to be drilling any holes. Okay, so I've got the ground effect LEDs zip tied on, and now I'm running the wire. And what I found to run the wire up the fairing, I knew that I'd be running it from the ground up the entire fairing, and what I found is these cable tie mounts, adhesive cable tie mounts, because I didn't want to drill any holes or anything. So I found these, and all you have to do in order to fit the wire through is use some side cutters, and you're going to cut off 2 of the corners. I'm going to see if I can show you this. But basically you're going to cut into the corners of these things and then cut down. So what it's going to do is open up a spot for you to put the wire. I don't know if you can see how that opens that up. So you do that on 2, and then you can slide the wire. You don't want to pull it up don't pull this piece up too hard, or else you're going to break it. But if you pull it up just a bit, you can slide the wire, the standard wire that comes with the LEDGlow kit. You can slide it in, and then with the adhesive, it's actually pretty strong, it's a 3M adhesive, you can run the wire all the way up without worrying about it hanging loose or anything like that and screwing up the look of your bike.